Magic is found in every room, where people connect over a shared purpose. Luke, Hannah and Chris explore the role of purpose, courage, mindset and culture in every leader's quest for transformational performance.
Welcome to Magic in the Room. I'm Hannah Bratterud.
And I'm Chris Province.
And I'm Luke Freeman. Season 5.
Season 5, come alive. Let's go. Let's go.
Up about this?
I'm jacked, man.
When had you ever done 5 seasons of something else?
That's a trick question.
I'm pretty sure Chris has done 5 seasons of lots of things.
Well, like there's
Sopranos.
TV shows,
Friends, Seinfeld.
but also just like what's an analog?
Oh,
I've been married 22 years.
Yeah.
That feels like
That's-
we've done 5 seasons worth of marriage.
Oh, wait. Yes. Definitely. Or 25 seasons.
Well, I don't know. Yeah, I don't know.
There's-
But like, when have you felt like, wow, I've really done
like we've
I
done
played this
something
game
here.
a few times.
Yeah.
I'm like a couple year season, and then there's gonna be a season. But I have done maybe the analog to I wasn't married for 25 years. There was a couple seasons in there. I worked at companies for what felt like
Yeah.
multiple seasons.
Yeah. And,
But usually for me, it's a couple years or a couple seasons, and then there's some kind of shift. And it doesn't mean the whole thing changes, but there's a different focus. And even on this podcast, right? We've gone through a couple of seasons that had kind of a very curriculum focus.
Yeah.
We had our first group of, our first 2 seasons were more freeform. Then we had a couple seasons that were more structured. Now it's evolving again, and we're embarking on this 5th season that I think is going to be very different than season 4.
yeah. Year of the Snake.
Is it?
Yeah. We have that. So just for you trusty listeners, we just finished strategic planning with the Purpose and Performance Group team over the last couple days here in Tulsa. So it was super fun. Everyone flew in and, we had fun and made good food and tried to get on the same page about where we're going. But we had all this conversation, about Year of the Snake and what does that mean? And, okay, I'm not an expert, so like someone comment if this is wrong, but one of the ways to think about Year of the Snake is like shedding is a thing that snakes do. So there's like this rebirth.
Shed a layer.
Yeah. And actually my son has this ball python, which is one of the great failures in my life, that there's a like snake living in my house. But it's in its like shedding moment right now. And so you can see like its eyes get all dull. It looks all like something like it needs some lotion on it. And then it, peels that skin off and it's all fresh and shiny and new. And anyway, like that's kind of what this feels like as the
Yep.
beginning of season 5.
Yeah.
Because it's kind of like going back to, let's just like talk about some things that feel real and feel relevant and be a little bit less, like you said, kind of curriculum driven.
Yeah. Is when I think about seasons, it's for me, it's thinking back of when I am in an organization, but get to move unit to unit, right?
Yeah.
Operating unit to operating unit or market to market. Those all feel like seasons. The thing about it is you don't know it when you're living them.
Exactly.
You're
not recognizing that you are in a season and that there is a transition that's going to come. Either it was forced upon you, or some kind of change or some kind of shift is going to come, and we don't see it when we're in the middle of it.
And I think that's just a function of like you're on a podcast or other media, like it kind of works in a calendar year, or like it's seasonal, right? So you kind of have fixed starts and stops. And when we're going through life, there's no calendar, right? You don't know when something's going to end or when a new beginning starts. I mean, you only know that through reflection. So as I reflect on where we've been, it's been incredible to have the conversations. I love the free form conversations we had during season 1 and 2. I love the curriculum that we covered during seasons 3 and 4. I think this, going forward, it's bringing all of that home. Reintroducing new thoughts and ideas as we work through life and continue to learn. And I think that's the most important thing is, there might have been things I thought in season 1 that I believe stronger today than I do then. I might have developed different language around some of those thoughts or ideas. There might be some things that I learned from that time that just, maybe not true or don't resonate with me in quite the same way. So in that way, every season of this podcast and life exists as an album, something to reflect upon and a great snapshot of a moment in time.
Yeah. Well, as to quote Bob Dylan, at times they are a changing, right? We're in a time of a lot of change right now, culturally, politically, from a business perspective. Which, fun fact, did you know this? So the official sanctioned Bob Dylan Museum is here in Tulsa,
Is it?
and Bob Dylan has never visited it. But
Really?
it was just announced his current world tour. He's going to have a show in Tulsa.
Oh wow.
When?
So,
Where can
I
I
don't
find
know.
the information? I'm gonna have to look this up.
I would I'll point you to the internet.
Yes.
I
Such a
don't
great
know.
resource.
Yes.
This new technology.
You might have heard about it. The times they are changing. There's a new thing called the World Wide Web. Okay, so today, first episode of season 5, we're going to do a 2024 look back and then look ahead. What's coming up in 2025. What are we excited about? And look, maybe we even have some theme words as we look at this year. So let's start with a look back. So 2024, what stands out? What went well? Let's start there. What are some positives that we can think wide, maybe trends? And let's also talk about for ourselves.
What went well was there was a lot of growth and a lot of rapid growth, which felt energizing.
Yeah.
And also taxing. So it was challenging because of that. I think that kind of growth always reveals weaknesses in the structure of whatever it is that's growing.
Yeah.
And that's not necessarily a bad thing unless it goes unchecked for too long and the foundation crumbles, right? So I think we are it's a great opportunity for a look back because we had growth and some weaknesses in the foundation are revealing themselves, and it's not too late to fix them.
Yeah.
So I think that's, what went well and what was challenging were related to that. I think for me, both in business, in my personal business and our team's business, and also in my personal life. Yeah.
Well, I think that's the intention is, right? Whatever system we're operating, we want to find a way to put appropriate pressure on it, right?
Yeah.
So how do we put pressure on it in such a way that reveals its fragility, right? And provides us an opportunity to increase that sustainability or the vibrance of the system that we're operating. So, the growth isn't, the kind of rapid growth has an expense, and there's pressure. It puts pressure on a piece of the system you haven't applied pressure to before. So paying attention to that and evaluating that and taking those steps to remedy it is super helpful.
Yeah.
When I think about more specific wins, the fact that we certified a 2000th coach this
Yeah.
year,
Yeah.
with so much of the organizational performance relying on that relationship between the leader and their direct report, the fact that we have connected with and supported the careers, and certified 2,000 coaches. As we continue to champion this opportunity to move organizations from a place of directive instruction to support and growth and development. That's super meaningful to me. I love that, in the fall, we hosted a whole room full of client partners to do strategic planning for 2025. And like in a multi-company setting to lead them through planning activities for the next year. And it was a group that was all from the same industry, from different regions, but exploring best practices and talking about, how to engage team members and customers heading into this year. That was super awesome. And then I'll call out like some of the deeply meaningful work that we did around like how to activate organizational values in that organization's leadership development programs. We talked to April and Kelly on here.
Yeah.
And like doing that with Citizen Potawatomi and activating the values of Mille Lacs in their coaching program. It's work that I'm honored to do. It's the kind of work we don't get to do enough of at any time in our career. But the experience of engaging with an organization that says, this is what we believe are aspirational attributes of our leaders and of our teams, and really partnering to say, here's how we can integrate those and get shared understanding about what they mean and how they can show up to grow this community. Super good. And that's what really kind of points me towards 2025. And I'll talk a little bit, I want to come back to like characters and virtues as we talk about 2025. But when I think about 2024, those are the wins.
Yeah. Shout out to Stephanie Licata on our team for that coaching. I mean, 2,000 people who have been practically equipped to be better leaders. It's awesome.
And that obviously
Little
wasn't in 1 year, let's say over the course of
Yeah.
the season of the
Yeah.
company.
Yeah. Okay. So I'm going to go way back as I get to 2024, because similar themes to you all, like busy growth. And that's not just at Purpose and Performance Group. Like I felt that in client organizations, it was like that, like things kicked into a different gear. And I believe a lot of that, we struggled through several years post-COVID. So we all have this kind of COVID experience, a lot of trauma in families, a lot of trauma in organizations, a lot of just like cognitive labor, emotional labor, trying to adjust, adapt. We as a team were like, oh my gosh, we got to figure out how to like do what we do online. Oh, okay, I'll learn a whole new skill. Sure. So, everyone was doing that kind of stuff. And then we found ourselves in like 2023, I feel like especially, we're like having this conversation with senior leaders about like how do I get people to actually work again and be excited about our work again? Because everyone was just so worn out. And it took time, it took years of like recovery. And so people marathoned. I remember I was part of like riffing thousands of people with one client during COVID, and like doing communication planning and all of this stuff. Riff is reduction force. So like literally you're like firing thousands of people. And
Only 4,000.
it's like,
Give yourself a break.
yeah. And it's like to come through that, the emotional toll of doing that is so huge, even for the people left. Like it takes a long time to recover. So in 2023, how do we like start working again? How do we even have aspirational goals for this company? And like that's what senior leaders were asking. And so we're just like, hey, like we gotta lean in. We gotta say we're moving forward, people. We gotta say like it's time to push ahead. And that's not universal. I know there are people that are still recovering. The people that still like life has changed in really drastic ways, and that's hard. And a lot of these companies like gotta move forward at a faster pace. And I think that came to fruition in 2024, that culturally, a lot of companies and a lot of the economy was like, all right, we kind of figured out these new competencies. We're gonna reinvest, we're gonna move forward. And for us internally, I mean, it's just like awesome. There's opportunity. Like people want to move forward. That's what we do, is help people move forward. And so we had a lot of work and our team grew. And I use this metaphor of like a rubber band. Um, I remember this kind of popped into my head several years ago, 4 or 5 years ago. I was talking with this group of young leaders, and they were kind of like, okay, our boss like runs at 1,000 miles an hour and she doesn't stop. And like, how can I ever live up to that? I'm like, well, you don't live up to it now, right? She can run 1,000 miles an hour because, like, imagine a rubber band. You take it out of the package and you can stretch it to where it's like 4 inches long, right? But then if you keep stretching it over and over and over again, it can get to like 6 inches long, right? And it can hold bigger and more stuff that you can put together with that rubber band. I was like, she's been doing that, like having these periods of sprint and stretches for so long that she has higher capacity than you. Sorry to say it. Like that's going to take a decade of work for you to get there and to stretch out. And I felt like for me, this was an extended stretching period. And so I expect some positive things for us. And I think organizationally it's positive. I love that our team grew. I love that we got to live into our purpose more and more, invest in thriving communities. That's our purpose. And there's also downside to being in a prolonged stretching period.
Yeah. I mean, you'll know what happens to a rubber band that just keeps getting stretched.
Dries out, cracks. You don't want to do that.
Snappy.
Snaps, right?
It's snappy.
So
Brittle.
what a great segue into what maybe was hard about 2024. And so I'll say for me, we talked about this as a team the other day, like balance. I was definitely in an execution phase, I think for longer than was healthy. I think our internal communication suffered. I feel like internal service quality for our team members, especially new team members or team members working on different types of projects.
Or existing team members.
You're fine.
If you came onto the team last year, hi, welcome.
Yes. Yeah.
If we haven't told you yet, thank you for doing that project.
And if you've been with the team since the beginning, we don't need to talk because we already know.
Yeah,
that's what tacit coordination,
right?
Or
everyone loves tacit coordination. We don't have to make things explicit.
So I think that's my fail for 2024 is just, my default when the chips are down is like work harder and push harder. And there's good things about that.
Stop answering email.
Right. Yeah. So that's the downside, right? Like the internal comms is good. It gets totally deprioritized, and we'd be better off with a dimmer. Right. So that's my fail. Yeah. How about you guys?
Did I fail?
Oh, you haven't identified any lows from 2020.
No, I mean it's similar. I think as we invest and build services for market, and as we write stories with our client partners, we've been fortunate and grateful to have written some pretty incredible stories.
Yeah.
And we do this stuff together because we work like hand in hand, and we're invested in the success. Like if there is not performance, we don't win. But that to grow as we have that pressure, right? It's like, I know I'm not going to stop writing the stories. I think that's what we're here to do.
Yeah.
So it is the bookkeeper that asked for the breakdown of the things that I'm like, oops. Luke, did you respond to that? No, did you? No, but it was 3 weeks ago when he asked for this.
Yeah.
One of us might need to respond. So, but that's a hugely important relationship. Like, our finance group and the work that Shell does over there, like he's a critically important part of the team. and I want him to have flowers and get the information he needs to do his job too.
Yeah.
So yeah, I believe similarly. It's like those administrative roles or those administrative tasks that we can sometimes look at as a thing that check off the list. Well, if we're out there kind of in the field doing the things with our partners, that's the stuff that falls by the wayside, which reflects on how I lead myself.
Yeah.
Okay. And I think that's the expense of it. It's not that I didn't email Shell back for 3 weeks. It's the badge of non-responsiveness and disrespect
Yeah.
that I carry for Shell now, because that's how I showed up to him.
Yeah.
And I know that that's not tenable.
Yeah. There's tarnish on the brand, right?
Yeah.
On the personal brand. I mean, that's the cost of that rubber band staying stretched for so long. Is it worth it? I don't know. Maybe not. Well, what can we learn from it and try and do differently and better going ahead? So about lows for you, Hannah.
For me, it's always same pattern. When things get really busy and hectic, some balls get dropped. And I think the ongoing game is to make sure none of the fragile balls drop and none of the ones that really are just going to shatter, and that they are kept in the air.
Yeah.
And that the balls that drop are hopefully the ones that are going to bounce back and you can pick up again. And so I think what I've seen both in my own journey as an entrepreneur and working with a lot of other small businesses, this cycle of feast and famine, revenue spikes and dips that happen as an effect of the season we just were in, right? So 2023, big season of business development, all of us, we were really focused on that, right?
Yeah.
And when you do that, opportunities come, and then you get into execution mode and you stay really focused on executing on those wins and keeping that clients happy and keeping the work going. And you are not focused on business development. And then that ball had to be put aside out of necessity because there wasn't capacity to do both.
Right.
And so now there's, a little bit of a dip where it's like, okay, we've done all this business development that led to a lot of things that had to be executed. And now we got to spin up the business development side again.
Yeah.
And hopefully you get to a point where you can even those out and build enough capacity to be focused on both business development and growth and effective execution at the same time. But when you're a small company and small business and everybody is at or over capacity, you don't have the capacity to do that, right? I often coach and work with solopreneurs. That's where it becomes the most obvious, right? Because you're one person and either you're working on the business or you're working in the business.
Yeah.
With a small team, you have some more resource, but it still becomes, like either you're in a season of working on the business or you're in a season of working in the business.
Speaking of seasons, right? That's why small businesses have sawtoothing revenues. But oftentimes when you see that dynamic, it's just a function of, hey, we're going to focus on addressing a market need or biz dev, or like we're going to do something that will intentionally drive business into the organization until it's at capacity. Then when it's at capacity, the organization has to catch up.
Yep.
So focus moves from biz dev and sales into operations. Now operations says, hey, hold on, time out. Like, we don't do this. Or a season passes, right? And now the demand is off because operations is caught up and we'd slowed down our biz dev. We got to ramp it back up. So that sawtoothing is something that we see a lot, in in small business, and it's something to certainly address. It's so tricky with resources afforded small business, and the market kind of determines what they're going to pay for a particular product or service. That's for the most part determined by the market. There's certainly things organizations can do to get premium, but a lot of times small businesses don't have the luxury of deploying a lot of resources in both of those areas, right? And depending on what profit model you're on. So, I think as we head into 2025, I think and hopefully our listeners out there as well, taking that look back on 2024 and saying, okay, what are those priority moves? What are our biggest levers?
Right.
And like, let's pull on those. Okay. Like every system has a biggest lever.
Yep.
And the lever might change, but for a season, there is a particular lever to pull. And I think, the idea, like how do really great leaders move quickly? They fix the biggest problem first and only focus on the biggest lever today.
Yeah.
So, I'm excited as we head in, to next year, the additional staff, additional resources, technologies coming on board, and the things we have going on internally. Meanwhile, like that market demand, barring anything unexpected happening, it looks like it should stay around.
Yeah. Okay. Before we switch to 2025, I think you really nailed something that maybe we haven't been explicit about, which is like this idea that there's always a biggest lever to pull. I think that really goes for bottlenecks too, or like anything holding a business back. There's always a largest issue. And by nature of addressing it, the next largest will emerge.
Right.
And I think the most effective operational leaders, and I think it goes for people as well, are quick to identify what that next thing is and default to action to address it. So if we always know what that next thing is, we address it, and then we know what the next thing is and are ready to address it, I think that's a recipe for success. And I mean, that's what I hear us talking about. So if you don't know what the next biggest problem is that you're going to tackle after your current project, like that's probably an issue. And kind of knowing those and keeping track of them and one after the other, like not pausing, right? That's critical. Okay, let's talk about 2025. Since we're talking about ourselves here, I'm going to segue by saying, because of this growth, because of how busy we've all been, like we're actually going into 2025, I'll say with the most resource we've ever had as a company, right? It's financial resource. And if it were another year, we would probably invest more in building out operational efficiency. But I'll say for me, with my 2025 look ahead, I see chaos in the market. We serve people who some of their revenue is driven by grants, right? If you're a tribe, Native American tribe, if you are in healthcare and some of your revenue is driven by Medicaid, right? We have those clients. So the marketplace for us has a lot of uncertainty just because of what's happening at the federal level and in kind of culture at large in the US. Because of that, we have to be really judicious about keeping cash so we can pivot. And we're going to talk in a later episode about like how your cash position actually determines the ability of generosity that you can have to your team.
Sure.
If and when there's a disruption, right? So we're at this point now where we have to be really intentional about how much cash do we keep kind of as the iceberg in case some sort of chaotic thing happens in the marketplace, and how much do we go ahead and reinvest just to keep the growth happening. And so it's we could go all in on growth and that makes us fragile, or we could be really conservative and keep a big iceberg fund. And that makes us fragile too, because we're not capitalizing on the growth that's out there available to us. So for me, when I look at 2025, like what does that mean? Being kind of having resource, but wanting to be diligent about how we use it. My kind of words about 2025 are twofold: multiplying my own impact. How can I outfit our team to multiply the impact that I and other kind of leaders on the team have, just by working smarter, not harder? And then the other thing is being agile and purpose driven. I want to be quick to respond to changes and 1,000% dedicated to our purpose. And that's a hard balance, right? Sometimes it looks one way, sometimes it looks another. But how do I figure out how to fulfill our purpose in changing conditions? So that's my 2025. Yeah. How about you, Hannah?
I think the words that resonate with me for this year and this season, it feels like I'm personally entering into a new season. I'm turning 50 right at the middle of this year.
Yay.
So it's going to be my middle year because I'm planning to, things don't always go according to plan, but the plan is to have a huge party on my 100th birthday and walk around and know everyone who's there.
Oh.
And that is that's the end goal.
Maybe
that
my
we're
goal
working
should be to
towards.
make it to your birthday. I don't have to make it to 100, but if I can make it to your birthday, I'd be close enough.
Can you ship that invite when I'm about 70?
Yeah.
Sure.
Yeah. If we could have
Yeah.
a pre-party,
Yeah.
that would be great. Because I'm thinking,
Party.
I just turned 44 last week.
Yeah.
And I'm thinking I'm probably halfway there as well.
Yeah.
So, I've got about 50 years to go. And what do I want this season to look like? I don't feel that I have a lot less to prove, but I still have things to realize and things to do and experience. And 50 years of living, you have a few things in your backpack, some that are helpful, some that are unhelpful. So sifting through some of that, and hopefully you have some wisdom so you can make some better decisions than some of the ones you made before. But I think for me, this year is about building capacity and strength and that starts with physical strength. I want to focus on strength training and building a strong body because as anyone who is in this stage of life and is female knows, and males too, start losing muscle tone, which has everything to do with longevity. And so building physical strength so that I can have a strong foundation, and any of those little cracks in the physical foundation that are starting to crop up, which ones can I repair, right? So that's the one system, the physical capacity. And that starts with strength. And then financial capacity. What are, there's been some pressures on that system and some cracks that are showing. What are the things I can do to strengthen that capacity? And then for team, what can I do and what can we do together to augment, and strengthen and build capacity within this system of the team that we're part of?
Yeah.
That's what I'm focused on. Would be
Awesome. Chris, how about you? 2025.
I'm gonna, doing the work with like values-based leadership that we did last year. All the contemplations that came with that. And this idea, that an organization like the high performance organization, what on the words of Horst Schulze, it's a community of common concern, right? There's a lot of value alignment in why we're in the business that we are. There's principles about how we interact with one another. and how we steward careers or hire more than a set of hands. But it really got me contemplating like why belief is important, why what we believe about the business we're in and what we believe about how we interact is so critical to our fulfillment, to a leader's effectiveness, and a team's ability to go win. Because if you show me a lack of belief, like I guarantee you chaos follows. The chaos is found where belief and values are absent. And that's what I want to bring to 2025, because I do think there's going to be a lot of uncertainty, and that uncertainty can lead to chaos. But as leaders, like our certificate to lead is found in the peace and the grace at which we approach each day. So I can show up today with characteristics or virtues of wisdom and transcendence, bravery or being courageous. I can show up with perseverance. I can show up with curiosity. I can show up with love for the person next to me that I'm doing work with. And I can activate those badges intentionally. I can put structures in place that make sure that those things show up, as opposed to this other set of badges that leaders can wear, that because I don't have belief, the badges that I'm showing with are fear, jealousy, disrespect, chaos, disorganization, underperformance. Like I can show up that way. If I'm not intentional about what I believe and what structures I'm using and activating the things that are best about being human, like, am I a mobile example of the best in humanity? And what do I believe is best about being human? And am I activating those things, or am I showing up with disrespect, chaos, fear, anxiety, jealousy, aggression? Like, no one wants to follow that. And I don't think there's a leader on earth that went out and said, hey, I'm going to go get a bunch of followers. But I think there's a lot of leaders that say, hey, I want to go love people up. I'm going to try to be courageous and make some change for things that I think humanity can be better as a result of. And like in the process of doing that, they find followers, people that have that common concern. And those are the groups that ultimately have the most impact, and they perform. So if you ask me like what I learned in 2024, it was the importance of how we lead ourselves, ultimately determining that effectiveness. It determines service levels, it determines revenue, it determines everything. So if you ask me today, what is the most important thing for leaders to learn? It's embracing the fact that how we lead our own lives and the values, character, and virtue that we activate is our badge to lead. That's how we earn it. And, maybe I'm slow on the uptake, but it's also why I'm glad as hell that we built Lead Yourself before we learn how to lead teams, because that is a gating factor. And only today can I put this message in these words because of everywhere that we've been. So I'm thankful for that. That's what I'm focused on. That's what I'm going to, focus on for myself, and focus on this message and sharing this exact message with other leaders as we move through the year.
Yeah, I'm just taking notes.
Yeah.
I love it. I mean, I think that's another episode. I mean, I love this idea that lack of belief leads to chaos. I think there's something in there around cynicism, right? If you don't believe anything, it's all about maximizing your own resource.
There's not hope.
Yeah.
So if there is not truly built for a better future, and I'm gonna sure extract whatever I can out of
Yeah.
the situation then.
Which I mean, yeah, we'll save it for another episode. But like that's the age we're living in.
Yeah.
Right. The extraction models are winning
Mm.
and financialization of everything. Right. Okay. Listeners, we would love to hear about your 2024. Throw it in whatever comments. Shoot us an email. We'd love to hear like what you see coming in 2025. What would help you be successful? If we can help you be successful, reach out. Purpose-driven leaders that believe something strongly, like those are our people. And we want to help you make that vision a reality. So thanks so much for listening. You get to listen in this year as we figure out 2025 and respond to it as it comes. And we'd love your feedback along the way. Chris, you want to read us out?
You bet. Magic in the Room is a production of Purpose and Performance Group. You can find all of our previous episodes at magicintheroom.com, also on Apple Podcasts, Spotify, or any of your other favorite podcast platforms. Our music is from Evan Grimm. You can find his music on Apple Music, and this episode is produced by Ethan Babylon at Babylon Virtual Productions and was recorded live in Tulsa, Oklahoma.